Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another episode of What TV Shows I Saw May 2023 edition. I only noticed after I filmed and edited and uploaded the previous episode of this series that I didn't do the intro in the April edition. So forever as it stands, permanently on the internet no less, the April edition will be the redheaded stepchild of this series. Nothing I can do about that now. I said last time that the TV scene is starting to get a little unpredictable, and that April was probably the most eventful month yet in terms of episodes that I've been doing for this particular series. But I think it goes without saying that May has easily topped that. There have been some interesting developments that have happened over the last few weeks. One of which is probably the thing that you've been hearing about the most since the start of the month. I'm not going to go too in-depth on it for two main reasons. A, that's not really what this show is about. We talk about the individual shows on this show and not so much news going on in the TV world, but also because it's a complicated issue that is really tough to boil down into like a 10 or 15 minute video. I might cover it in depth at some point, but for now, I'm just going to leave it to the professionals. If you want a really good in-depth look at the writer's strike, go ahead and watch either Dan Morell's video on it or Drew Gooden's. They're professionals for a reason. All I'm going to say on it for now is that there were a few shows that I was watching pretty consistently and was talking about for this series that didn't produce any new episodes this month, including Saturday Night Live and John Oliver, two of my favorite shows of all time. The other interesting thing about May is the fact that it is also finale season, which means a lot of shows that I was watching consistently for this series ended up finishing their runs or their seasons this month. So I'm going to start off with some of those. Raving Geeks ended up posting their last couple of episodes for the season this month on the CMU YouTube channel, and I thought they were pretty interesting. As it turns out, Hope's tenure as co-host is actually going to be over because she's graduating, and that's particularly how the show likes to designate their hosts, is who's actually currently a student there. So that's pretty cool, knowing that my buddy Carter is going to take over the reins here and be the permanent host for this show going forward. It's unclear yet if he's going to have a co-host. I'm assuming that he probably will come fall, but I guess time will tell on that. Either way, though, I'm looking forward to it because this show has been a really, really fun, familiar just voice in the pop culture world for me now. This has just become a very good comfort series for me now. I just turn this on when I'm on a long car ride or when I'm cooking or doing chores around the house, and I just need something to entertain me, to take my mind off of whatever mundane task I'm doing at the moment. This is just a really fun show to see the lens of pop culture through the eyes of geeks. Next Level Chef had its finale this month, and I've seen a lot of people say that this is one of the best reality shows currently on TV, and I couldn't agree more. I gotta tell you, the Twitter sphere during the finale was something I could not predict. I mean, I've been around the block a few times, and I use Twitter myself, but even for Twitter standards, there was some crazy shit getting thrown around here. The one really interesting part of it was I think the one person who ended up winning the finale was like the least expected to from the overall, fandom, which was kind of interesting to see. But all in all, I think that person really put their best foot forward and really delivered some really good looking dishes. So shout out to them. Obviously, I'm not spoiling it in case you haven't seen, but yeah, definitely check it out. It's a really good season. The show also has already been renewed for seasons 3 and 4. I assume because it's just that popular and, so many people love it that much that it automatically got the approval because it just has that big of a fandom. And not because of, any other reason. Couldn't be for any other reason, right? NBC's Night Court concluded its season this month, and I gotta say, the 2-part finale, that was a nice touch. I'm still kind of on the fence whether or not to recommend this show to people because, in all fairness, I do think it is pretty funny and it does deliver on the basic idea of what a sitcom should be. It does make you laugh and it is a very comforting show. But on the other hand, there's just so many better, more memorable things that are out there currently that I don't necessarily know if Night Court is something that's going to strike a chord with everybody currently. And outside of the brief nostalgia you might get if you grew up with the original show, there's just not anything here that really connects it back in a way that's very, interesting or memorable, sadly. I still really like it, if not for the fact that Melissa Rauch is just such a great performer on TV in general. Like, obviously, The Big Bang Theory was a huge hit for her. She's done other projects that have been really great as well. I just really like her in general, so I will definitely be continuing to watch this when season 2 comes out. But for the meantime, if you're not already into it, then it's probably not something you have to watch. The last of the finales I want to talk about real quick is FBI. FBI is one of my favorite shows on TV. I know you guys are probably sick of me saying that by now, but for a great procedural weekly police show like this one knocks it out of the park every time, and the finale was arguably the best of the entire season. Moving on from that, another show that I've been keeping up to week is the Ned's Declassified podcast. I think this is getting better with age. I think it's getting better with time. A lot of the really, really funny segments have come from the last couple of episodes, maybe like 2 or 3 episodes, and I gotta say, Lindsay Shaw is just one of the funniest people on this entire planet. Like, I know, I was part of the group that condemned her a long time ago that was like, hey, you can't support her anymore. Her career is done. And then she brings up this bad boy with Devin and Daniel, and it's just like, she's just fucking incredible, all right? She's completely done a 180 on an entire reputation. I didn't even know that was possible, but somehow she pulled it off. And now she's as likable and as funny as she's ever been. If you're a Ned's Declassified fan and you're not keeping up with this, you're doing yourself a disservice. Definitely check this one out when you get a chance. How I Met Your Father came back after its mid-season hiatus, and to be honest with you, I think this is even more of a middling show than Night Court at the moment, which is very upsetting because honestly, I really, really want to like this more than I do. Of course, I'm a huge How I Met Your Mother fan, and How I Met Your Father does retain a lot of those elements that made Him Yim so great in the first place, but there's just something still that's just not really connecting for me. Sadly, I think that's the case for most people, and part of it is, I think, the idea that they're trying too hard at times, like, in general, with the writing, with the characters, to just make it, like, a little bit more memorable than it really is. And I think the other part of it is that a lot of the storylines feel a bit half-baked in a way, like they're just not really fully fleshing out a lot of the plots or how that'll, connect into the future episodes like Him Yim did so seamlessly. I say all this with the tone of voice that's like a little uncertain because I'm not really sure if that's really the problem, but I just don't really have a clear conscience of why I'm not enjoying it as much as I used to. But for some reason, I just don't think that season 2 is really holding up as much as it should be. And sadly, the best episode and also the most forgettable episode so far was probably the Barney Stinson cameo. So I don't know what that says, but that's just the truth. Beavis and Butthead is a show that I actually caught up with this month, and I gotta say, this shit is perfect. Like, legitimately, this is one of the funniest shows on TV. Every single episode gives you exactly what you want. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it guarantees you some of the best belly laughs you've ever experienced. Another show in that same vein was Jury Duty. This was a show that I was hearing some murmurs about for the last few weeks and decided to give it a chance here, mainly because the whole season had just wrapped up and it was a really quick binge watch, only 8 episodes long, all within a half an hour range. The basic premise of the show follows this guy Ronald, who is a selected member of the California State Jury. Little does he know, though, he's the only one that's not in on the gimmick. Everybody else around him, including the judge and all the other jurors, are actors, and everything that he sees played out is actually carefully planned and scripted ahead of time. It's a really brilliant satire, not only just on jury duty, but also the way that reality TV as a whole is filmed. And it takes a lot of inspiration from previous cringe comedy and mockumentary-style shows like The Rehearsal from earlier last year. It's a really, really interesting take on comedy and sitcoms, which is my favorite genre of TV, and it's definitely something that if you haven't seen it already and you're looking for something that's a little more out of the box and not just the same old that you've been served up over the last few years, this is definitely one that I can't recommend enough. Also, shout out to James Marsden. He was Corny Collins in my favorite musical of all time, Hairspray. He's phenomenal here. If not watching it for the premise, watch it for him. Speaking of musicals, I also caught up with Schmigadoon Season 2. I can't believe I'm going to say this right now. I mean, I've said some crazy shit on this channel before, some shit that's gotten me in more hot water than others. But somehow, they did the unthinkable. Season 2 is better than Season 1. And Season 1 was already one of the best shows, not only of the year, but maybe of all time that I've ever seen. Schmigadoon is a musical, satire, comedy, drama, everything that you want in good TV, jam-packed into 6 half-an-hour episodes that give you a full fleshed-out story, amazing characters, great romance, and catchy fucking music. Cecily Strong and Keegan-Michael Key are two of the best, most dynamic performers of all time, in my opinion. I've known them through the sketch comedy world, of course, SNL and Key and Peele, respectively. But here, they just work so well together. They have such a great balance between each other. Keegan-Michael Key's character is supposed to be the one that's like very cynical, doesn't really care for musicals, and it plays into this like satire, this like fourth wall breaking even, that just works so well for this type of setup. A lot of the cast comes back for Season 2, but they play radically different characters this time. Season 1 definitely focused in on more lighthearted and colorful musicals of like the 40s and 50s, stuff like The Music Man and The Sound of Music, and this time it's a lot more darker of subject matter, such as Chicago or Cabaret, Sweeney Todd, things like that. And overall, it just works better for this, like I said. Every review I've seen of this show so far, especially Season 2, always preferences it with, why aren't you watching this if you're not already? It is one of the best shows ever. It is going to go down in the history books as one of the most overlooked shows from the streaming era. It's absolutely perfection wrapped into a tight little package that you can knock out in less than 3 hours for this one season and less than 6 hours for the entire series thus far. Speaking of short watches, Swarm. Now this, on the other hand, if you want dark TV, oh boy, do I have something for you. I've been a Donald Glover / Childish Gambino fan for a while now. I think that he's really talented musically. I think he's one of the best rappers out there. TV-wise, I know a lot of people love him from Community. I think that he's okay on Community, even though I'm not that big of a fan of that show in particular. But he's done some movies and some other smaller projects that I thought were really interesting. This is his first time that I'm aware of that he's writing and directing a series, in fact. And I think on that front, he actually does a pretty good job here. Swarm is meant to be a satirical horror psychological comedy of sorts, detailing the life of a stan, and sort of takes a look into current day standing culture and musical fame. The main character, named Dre, is obsessed with this singer and huge, music star named Nyjah, who's meant to be a very direct inspiration from Beyonce, who, as most of you probably know, is not only one of the biggest musical singers ever, but also has a diehard fan base that pretty much does anything for her, even in irrational situations. Swarm takes this to the extreme, with Dre pretty much taking Nyjah's defense on everything and anything that dare discredits her musical talent or her level of success. It gets really intense and really dark at times, so this is definitely not a show for the faint of heart. This shit has a lot of murder, a lot of blood, a lot of gore, a lot of dicks and tits too. They got away with a lot of shit here. But if you want a show that challenges exactly what TV is meant to do and takes a look into one of the most current issues of the day, this is definitely a good pick. I decided to give Chicken Girls a watch this month, as it's been on my radar for a little while now, probably the last maybe 3 years or so, and it's definitely a show that I have some thoughts on. I'd be genuinely shocked if anyone watching this hasn't at least heard of this show, or at the very least its channel, Brat TV, one of the biggest YouTube channels of all time. Chicken Girls is a web series that's now gone on for over 10 seasons, which is pretty surreal to think, as it just came out in 2017, so it's one of those that does 2 seasons a year, But it has a diehard fandom, millions and millions and millions of views, easily Brat TV's flagship series, with its biggest video being its movie, the Chicken Girls movie, with a whopping 40 million views. On top of that, it also has one of the most consistent IMDb runs of all time. Even though there aren't that many reviews on it, pretty much every episode is in the high 8s to low 9s. So clearly, there is a massive fandom for the show, and looking through the comments, it seems like a lot of people really enjoy this. They have a lot of nostalgia for it. I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes here when I say this show didn't really do much for me. I really tried to like it. I saw the first 2 seasons in full. I figured that would be enough to eventually get it to click for me. There's still just a lot of things about it that I just don't really think are very good objectively. A lot of the dialogue here is really scant and it's horribly delivered. The performances here, the acting, is just awful. Just ripping the Band-Aid off, it's just awful. I don't want to be too harsh because I know a lot of these people were, young kids when they were on this show. The average range for most of the actors were like 12 to like 15, and many of them are still not even older than me, and I'm only 23. So it's, I don't want to be too harsh. They're basically kids just doing this, for fun, if anything else. But man, do they need some acting lessons. They need to get a coach in there to tell them what proper delivery and enunciation is. In addition to that, I think a lot of the appeal of this show is the fact that it's also a musical in a way. And unlike something like Schmigadoon, which is actually smart and professional with its music, this is really cheap, tinny production, and it's got that very teeny bopper feel to it. There are some honestly kind of catchy songs. I think the theme song is actually not that bad, but most of the other performances, especially ones that are delivered by characters who aren't singers in the show, just feel really out of place and just feel really tacked on to really milk this cow for all it's worth. There's also some let's go with questionable scenes. I think questionable is an appropriate word for this. The basic premise of the show follows this group of friends nicknamed the Chicken Girls, who are high schoolers, and they do this little dance competition. They're a dance team essentially, and so there are some scenes where they do some dancing, and it's filmed in a way that really emphasizes the dancing. I think you can see where this is headed, but it's a little creepy. It's a little weird. Again, some of these people were 12 when this show started, so I don't know what that says, but not really something I wanted to see, Again, I get why this is popular, especially for the tweenage crowd. There's a lot of really, simple, relationship drama here, and a lot of ships that people are probably favoriting in some way that they're going to root for, obviously the main one being Rhyme and TK. But still, at the end of the day, this is just objectively so much worse than anything else out there. The fact that it's as popular, if not more popular, and has gone on for longer than some shows like, Binging with Babish or ERB or something like that, and it has the same level of fame as those, I just can't justify it, because given its quality, it's just nowhere near the level of something like that, at least to me. And all in all, if you've only heard things about it, but you've always kind of been on the sidelines about it, yeah, you don't have to watch this. Trust me, you don't have to watch it. I will be following up at least watching the movie, because that is the most viewed thing from this series, and from what I understand, it's probably the best thing from the series. So if that doesn't do it for me, I'm probably going to bail on it, because I do not really want to be watching 10 seasons of this show. That's just so much to talk about, man. And eventually, I have to be the one to put my foot down and say, hey, I've already watched so much bad TV out there. Isn't it someone else's turn to pick up the dirty work? I mean, Jess, Hope, Mike, other Mike, Sean, any other big TV TikToker or YouTuber out there who has way more influence than me. You guys can pick this one up, because I've already seen all of Better Call Saul Presents Slippin' Jimmy and Nickelodeon's School of Rock. At some point, you guys can assist me on this one. But yeah, that's everything I watched this month. It was a pretty light haul for obvious reasons, and sadly, there wasn't that much to talk about in terms of the actual impact a lot of these shows made, because most of them only had a few episodes here to finish out their runs, or in something like Himyef's case, just coming back from a hiatus. So I don't know what that says, but yeah, Thanks for watching regardless. I hope that this series can continue on and it'll be at least a little less dry, I suppose. I did this one unscripted to stand in solidarity with the writers. So hopefully they figure that shit out, because it's fucked up. It really is. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.